I was thinking the other day about the different ways I like to create chord progressions. And one of the things I thought about was I like to do more with a lot less. I believe there's a time and place for crazy runs and licks, but I really like creating progressions where the chords themselves are at the center and there's not a lot of other stuff going on. This approach has allowed me to create music that people can connect with. So that's why in this video, I'm going to share a simple but tasteful approach to creating chord progressions. The first idea that I want to talk about is voice leading. It's basically this concept of transitioning between chord voices in a very smooth way. How do you use voice leading? Well, basically, you have to take advantage of chord inversions. Now, if you don't know what chord inversions are, they're basically just a different way to play the same chord. Now, if I have the C major chord, I'm playing it like C, E, G, but another way to play that same C major chord is E, G, C. That's still a C major chord, but it's in the first inversion. So all I did was I just rearranged the notes. So instead of playing C, E, G, I can play E, G, C, and that's the first inversion of C major. Voice leading is a great way, a simple way to create these really tasteful and elegant progressions. Now, let's say originally I had some progression or a couple of chords in the progression that sounded like, that's it, I just had those two chords. Like that sounds good, right? Like this is all contextual. Everything that I'm gonna say in this video is very contextual. Instead of playing these chords like this, what if there was a much more seamless, a much more smoother way to go from chord A to chord B, right? So that's what voice leading is. So if you look at these two chords, I'm kind of making a jump in between those two chords. I'm going from here and I'm jumping up to here. So what if instead of playing it like this, what if I did something like, instead of playing this F up here, what if I moved the F down an octave? So instead of doing, what if I did, let me add in the bass. Like that sounds really good. I'm taking advantage of voice leading. I'm smoothly going from chord A to chord B. That sounds good. Instead of doing, like that sounds really good. It's a very simple but elegant way to approach creating, these different chord progressions. Now, one thing I will note is by changing this top note down an octave, the melody is now at C. So instead of doing, it's now. So if you can sacrifice the melody, oftentimes that, in order to smoothly go from chord A to chord B, you'll have to change what the melody is. If the melody can be sacrificed, then I will say that voice leading can be a really great option of creating like these really cool sounding chord progression. All right, now the second idea is this whole notion of embellishments. Now, if you've been watching my progressions and the way I play, you might have noticed this before. So basically embellishments is just a way to play a particular chord. It gives the chord more texture, it gives it a little bit more character. It also makes things a little bit more dynamic rather than things just being super static. Instead of playing a chord like this, like the chord itself is very static. Nothing's happening within that chord. But what if I added in some embellishments? So instead of playing it like this, what if I did something like, if you look at it, I'm adding in, it's very subtle, I'm adding in that C into that chord. At the heart, I'm still playing the C minor 11 chord, but I'm adding in that embellishment. Let's do another example. Let's say I do something like, instead of playing it like I could do, or I could do something like, so I'm just adding in little things into that chord to just give it a little bit more texture, a little bit more character to the overall chord itself. And there's no formula to like say, oh, you're supposed to play like these notes with this chord. Like I'm just basically just playing around with the chord itself and just adding in little extra things into the chord to give it a little bit more, just to do more within the actual chord itself. So let's say, for example, I had a chord progression that sounded like, so just those two chords. Let's say that's some musical idea that I've came up with. So instead of playing these chords like this is very static. I'm not doing anything. I'm just playing the chords themselves in a very block manner. Now, instead of playing the chords like that, what if I did something like, I'm adding in little embellishments. Like at the heart, I'm still playing the same two chords. And all I did was I just added in little embellishments into those chords to essentially give the chords a different feel, kind of like a different meaning. They're a little bit more dynamic. A little bit more is happening to the overall chord progression itself. It's still still playing two very simple chords, but I'm adding in little embellishments to kind of like give it a little bit more character to it. And once again, there's no formula to coming up with these embellishments. Is basically just play something that sounds good, that feels right. It's probably going to take practice to come up with or playing these little playing these chords in such a way where you're adding in these little embellishments in between chords or on a particular chord. But feel free to experiment with this whole idea of embellishments, and I think it's a really great way to provide more texture and a little bit more character to the overall chords themselves. The final idea is create space. It gives the listener a chance to process what they're hearing and also get a chance to kind of like just sit there and be present in the moment with the music. I feel like oftentimes a lot of music can be very overwhelming for the listener. There's a lot of things that's happening within the music itself, and it doesn't really give the listener a chance to kind of like process what's happening in the moment in real time. And creating space kind of like gives the listener kind of like a chance to just be there, but also not get super overwhelmed with what they're listening to. But I could have a progression that sounds something like, like that sounds pretty good, but there's a lot happening, right? Like I'm doing a whole bunch. Like there's a lot happening within that progression. So instead of playing the progression like that, what if I provided a little bit of space? I'm not doing a whole lot within the progression. Once again, this is all contextual. But let's say I had a musical idea where I just kind of like wanted the music to just be there and let the listener kind of like just soak up what they're listening to. There's not a lot of extra stuff going around the main important chords. So instead of playing that progression like that, what if I had something instead where I'm providing a little bit more space and it's a little bit more simple. So you can imagine it could be something like, I felt like the music was saying something different than my previous example where I was doing a lot more stuff within the chord progression and between the chords. So I feel like creating that space, it gives the music a different meaning. It's saying something a little different. And then also, I think it's just a really elegant and simple approach to creating these progressions where the listener can kind of just like be there with you in that space. Creating space is a really good strategy. I'm a huge supporter of it. I often feel like you don't have to do a whole lot to convey an idea. Honestly, I think minimal chord progressions are extremely effective. You're not doing a lot, but I think that's the point. You give the listener a chance to soak up what you're doing and kind of like just be there with you. So I hope this video was helpful in giving you ideas on how to create chord progressions that are simple but also tasteful. So feel free to find what works for you and integrate it into your playing, and yeah, see what you come up with. See you in the next one.